Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a hard question to answer, the impacts of COVID on a hospitality business, because there is nothing that wasn't impacted and impacted very severely. In March of 2020, I was forced to lay off our entire company. It was 350 people. Very, very painful experience, and a very scary, dark time. I think that we all, had a different, experience with. The next 2 years have been best described for us as just a roller coaster. We were open, we were closed, we were sort of open, we were sort of not closed. We were, required to add lots and lots of levels of operational systems and sanitation systems. And so, the best way to really kind of put it in perspective for us operationally for the last 2 years has just been very tumultuous. And we've just been sort of white knuckling, holding on for dear life. I'm happy to say today, all of the restaurants are fully reopened. Just literally in the last couple of weeks, we are pretty much back to being, at staffing levels that are not negatively impacting our operation. We're not back to the levels we were pre-COVID, but we're back to levels that allow us to operate at full capacity. For the last year, that has not been the case, and we have been required to shut down certain days of the week, shut down certain sections of the restaurants, limit, eliminate to-go ordering because we just didn't have the kitchen capacity to keep up. So I think in every level, from facilities, from operation, and from human resources, the entire, COVID experience has been very, very, very difficult.
Thank you, Sherry. And as we ask Steve to join in this discussion, I think our members would be interested too to understand how if your business models have changed. What we're hearing is, the need for flexibility, being nimble, responsive. So I don't know if you'd like to comment before then we bridge in Steve, and for the two of you to really help us understand how business management, logistics, personnel management has changed. And this term that I've heard, which is the Great Resignation, this term now that a university professor, I think, coined to discuss this significant shift among employees nationwide, kind of who's in the driver's seat. So you and Steve, please, let's have some interactive dialogue around this.
I can jump in on that. At our property, when we're fully staffed, we'll have around 800 employees. So you can imagine the expectation of the guests, which is the lens we choose to use when making sure that we're ready, just like Sherry was talking to in regards to her challenges. We certainly experience the same. And as we look ahead, it's something we're moving resources towards. Any business, doesn't matter what you're doing. If, pre-pandemic, it may have been another challenge. Right now, it is staffing, both in leadership and also hourly positions. So we've actually increased areas of our business to be fully more dedicated to recruitment, advertising, marketing for new employees. And I think one thing that we're trying to do is, instead of, we're a global organization. Marriott is 7,000 hotels worldwide. So we have a pretty big pool to go play in. But we're really realizing, because of some of the dynamics that I'll speak to in Santa Barbara, we're best if we can really look and shop local and really put our efforts into our backyard. We believe that there is a community within Santa Barbara, the greater Santa Barbara market, that kind of lost some of the, our industry kind of fell off of its, lost some of the cachet for our industry, and people stopped looking at it. And we need to recreate that. That's why I got into the business over 30, almost 40 years ago now. And I think we're doing that. We're doing some things with Visit Santa Barbara. We're doing things as the property. But I think the biggest thing we also have to do is to realize that just because I and others were willing to do certain things 20, 30 years ago when our careers were starting, we have to be flexible with that and recognize that, our greatest resource is our ladies and gentlemen at Ritz-Carlton and our service commitment to our guests. Nothing happens if we don't have those ladies and gentlemen. And so we have to be more flexible with schedules, with obviously compensation, with benefits, how many can work from home, how many cannot. In the hotel business, certainly in luxury, that can be very, very difficult. And but we are looking at what positions we can change through the paradigm of what we're facing. And then the other thing that, my experience that you mentioned in mountain communities have done a very good job throughout most of them, I should say, in creating and developing workforce housing. And that is a big need in this community. As I look at the challenges we face ahead, it's, I recruit from all over the world for a lot of positions. And the first thing they talk about is the cost of living in Santa Barbara. And these aren't people coming from low cost areas. These are people like myself coming from Vail, Palm Springs, Naples, Florida. And so one of the areas that we need in Santa Barbara County, and certainly in the greater Santa Barbara, is employee housing, deed restricted occasionally, so they can get into the market. And it's something that I think of all the challenges I see in the future, I see this as something that really needs to be addressed.
Well, thanks, Steve. Sherry, does that must resonate with you, what Steve's experience. What would you like to share as well to continue to advance our discussion today?
Yeah, I would agree with Steve wholeheartedly. I mean, the labor force, you mentioned the Great Resignation. We've had, a mass exodus from our industry at all levels, literally from the most senior management down. And it's made it very, very difficult. Hospitality, in particularly in my case and in Steve's, we're in the experience business. We take care of people. That's what we do. We do it through beautiful resort stays or a lovely dinner or beautiful bottle of wine, but we take care of people. That's the business that we're in. And, there's a lot of conversation throughout the pandemic of pivoting and change your business model. Well, that doesn't work when you're in the experience model and you cannot give your guests an experience. Then your business model doesn't work. Your business doesn't work. Takeout doesn't work. I mean, we tried takeout on a number of occasions. It was the fastest course we could find towards absolute hemorrhaging cash. Takeout represents 1% of our business. And to try and pull a team together and a staff together and open a business to do 1% of your sales doesn't work. I think it's easier said than done, this whole idea of, pivot, but when that's not what you do, that's not what we do. And so it isn't until we could actually get people back into our restaurants where we could take care of them and create a very important experience for them that we were able actually to get back to work.
And one thing I'll put in also, I think in both of our spaces is, we're in the luxury business, and there's certain models that can work at other industries, but our guests are looking for this experience and the interaction. No doubt, we've used automation like I never thought I would see so quickly in a luxury mindset, everything from QR codes to things that I never thought had any space in our business. And some of those are going to stick, some of them. But guests, what we're seeing are wanting what they used to know as luxury. Some, I would say 80%, 20% no, are saying, I want more privacy. I want more space. I can get to my room on my own. I don't need a bellman. I don't want you to valet park my car. That's slowly disappearing. We're seeing more and more traditional reach back to what they want as luxury. In our company, a big movement has been remote check-in or virtual check-in, where you can actually go to your room with your phone. And just, we tell you what room number you're in and you get to your room and click, it opens. anybody who's been to my property, that would be a tough challenge. I think I'd still find them wandering the resort. So in a city hotel, that would work out just fine. But there is this desire for human connectivity. Sherry made the point of experience is everything. They want to meet the people. They want to interact with the people. And we have to, as in our business, is to recreate that cachet. I spoke to it, that what we had when I came into it. And I think part of that is us changing our mindset, because the customer's paying, and we need to make sure that we're delivering that experience to continue to grow our market in Santa Barbara, but also grow the brand of Santa Barbara as we compete globally.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Sherry. And I'd like to bring in Austin. We've heard experience, cachet. How is this relevant and kind of central to the commercial brokerage work you're doing, and the kind of out of area, even clientele you're working with, Austin?
Well, I don't think my business is really that tied, other than selling assets, to what these two have to deal with. All I can really say is that when COVID hit, every single deal I was working on completely fell apart. The phone stopped ringing. Nobody wanted anything to do with any business transactions at all. And so that's really the only impact that it had on me. I don't really have to create a customer experience too much. I certainly don't have as many variables as these two have. But I do get to hear a lot of my clients complain about how difficult it is for housing and for retaining employees, so forth. But yeah, I don't have as much on my plate as these two do.
The clients you've had, Austin, especially during the last couple of years, interested in Santa Barbara, interested in making significant investments in hospitality assets here. Tell us about that. I'm thinking of how this kind of marries, as a companion piece to what we're hearing from Sherry and Steve regarding the Santa Barbara attractiveness, the Santa Barbara brand. What can you share with us in that regard?
Well, Santa Barbara kind of carries its own weight, so to speak. I mean, everybody thinks of Santa Barbara as this amazing place, which it is. So it's really not too hard of a sell to get people to come to Santa Barbara. I think the pandemic pushed people out of cities and into Santa Barbara, and our hotel industry has seen a big boom. I was told a couple months ago that the Miramar had the highest average daily rate of any hotel in the world for a couple months there. And so I think that hotel, along with the Ritz-Carlton and the Californian, brought a lot of interesting people to town. And I think that's probably spilled over into the residential market. I think it's certainly spilled over into the restaurant business. So I think that's that.
One thing Austin mentioned that I think sometimes we forget, at least in my space, is that we get guests. 75% of our business comes from Southern California, maybe 20% comes from Northern California. This is the last 2 years, and then 5 or 10% from wherever else. It's all been drive-in. I think to the point of the real estate connection with the hospitality business, I'm always amazed in how many guests I meet at this property and at others who are here visiting, and either here visiting and looking at real estate, here visiting and now saying, let's start looking at a purchase. So, when we bring in customers, throughout the year, I think it's always been a missed opportunity. And because I always say when I meet a guest and they stay with us a bunch, and then they say, hey, guess what? There's great news. We just bought a house in Santa Barbara. I always want to say, well, who's that good news for? I mean, it's not good news for me. I think you should stay in a hotel. But it is, our businesses, especially in the luxury segment, provide a great platform for people to go out and say, wow, let's open a restaurant here, or let's open a art gallery here, or hopefully not buy a hotel here. But they can buy, just don't build one. But it's interesting how I think our guests, you know, if you're traveling right now and staying at Belmont, Rosewood, or the Ritz-Carlton, you're probably at the level that you could buy your second or third home, and Santa Barbara is now an option.
Yeah, I would also say that we're starting to see a lot of people that have moved here from either New York or San Francisco. And I get calls all the time from people saying, you know what this town needs? It needs one of these that we had back in our town, or something like that, you know, some, whatever it is, a restaurant, a cafe or something. And so I think you're seeing a little bit of that as well.
What are some of those interests or needs that where they see gaps? Have they been specific at all, Austin?
I don't want to get into specifics, but I would just hospitality business.
Okay.
Just because I'm working with them.
Yeah, I was just wondering, for example, is it more experiential than a certain type of like culinary interest, you know, that sort of thing, as we're seeing quite a bit of transition in Santa Barbara in terms of the retail experience, the service related experience. Not to over prompt you, I didn't know if there was anything else that could be of interest there. But I understand, you know.
Everything's got to be experience related. Going back to what these two said, I mean, it's the selling isn't working really well anymore. You gotta have some sort of experience, and I think that's struggling with downtown Santa Barbara right now. Is there's not much of an experience, you know, around the mall and so forth. Whereas if you go to the Grove or any of these other big malls, there's a lot of different experiences to have when you're there, other than just buying a new shirt or you know, a handbag.
I know that housing was mentioned. Back to you, Steve.
One of the things I was going to mention that we're seeing is, you know, and I think Sherry's group really does it as well as anybody I've seen in a destination, is that feeling of authenticity, that connection. These people will never really, most will not see many places like Santa Barbara in their careers or in their lives. And as we bring in groups and weddings and just leisure groups and leisure guests in general, what they absolutely love about downtown Santa Barbara, and I know because we send a lot of business to Sherry's restaurants and others down there, is the authenticity of those spaces. And they're not cookie cutter. You don't see them in Laguna. You don't see them in Newport. You don't see them in Palm Springs. It's different. I think that authenticity really helps us not become homogenized into what you're seeing in other destinations, which is just chain restaurant after chain restaurant after chain restaurant. And I think that's very, very important to the Santa Barbara experience. It really brings some credibility, and I think what makes it authentic. There's just a sense of heritage, and guests are looking for that. They want to know the person's name who's on the wine bottle. They want to know the restaurateur. They want to know the chef. They want to understand what this space was before it became a restaurant. And I think that kind of stuff doesn't exist in a
Sherry, anything to add as a jumping off point to talking about our nightlife, which was one of the questions we're posing to the panelists?
Well, I would reiterate Steve's comments. I think Santa Barbara is a very special place, and we're lucky that we have so many places here for visitors coming in to be able to, you know, kind of experience things that are original. You know, they're just one of a kind, and they're very reflective of the greater Santa Barbara community. And that's what people are coming here for, is they want to be in Santa Barbara and actually have an opportunity to do things that are uniquely part of this place. So we work very, very hard on that. And along with many other great operators downtown. And I think it's an important part of that fabric of what the overall experience in coming here is.
If things hold the way they are now, fingers crossed that we're really coming out of COVID into, I dare I say, a new normal, or a different way of planning for business, running business, and being even in community. Back to Austin. Austin, do you see any type of evolution or transition in terms of who's wanting to invest in Santa Barbara and what they're wanting to invest in? And then we'll come back to Steve and Sherry to talk about what that means for businesses.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of people that want to invest in Santa Barbara. My biggest fear with Santa Barbara right now is the homeless issue. I think if it continues to get worse, it will affect hospitality. And we're on a good run right now. And I think it's a perfect time for the city to address it. I don't really know the answers to how to address it, but I think we have to address it in some form or fashion, because eventually if it gets really bad, then people aren't going to want to visit here, and they're not going to want to go downtown and visit restaurants and so forth. So that's kind of my biggest fear, is that that's going to start to affect things. And we've got a good momentum right now. It doesn't seem to be affecting things too much right now, but I certainly would hate to see it take a turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, certainly some state and federal monies have come to the county, which are being distributed to the cities. So we'll hope that's a continued proactive problem solving, is in place there. And you and I have had those conversations, Austin, for sure. Steve and Sherry, nightlife coming out of COVID, where are we going? What are you seeing? Can you anticipate some trends on a forward going basis?
Yeah, I'll share what we see with our guests. And I do want to go back and echo the great concern I have of the homeless issue downtown. And I think what's happened on State Street is so great. And just what happened almost overnight has been so well done. Will it get better? Of course it'll get better. But boy, the thought, and I've seen it happen in other destinations, when a crime happens to a tourist and it gets national media, the impact it'll have within our community, not only to the victim, but to our community, will be unbelievable. And something we have to be very, very mindful of. In regards to nightlife, we have about 358 rooms, let's say 700 to 800 guests a night in the hotel when we're full, and we're full next 10 days. We at best we can feed around 400 to 450 at night at the property. So we have 300 or 400 guests a night leaving the property and going out. As much as I would love them to stay, that's not why they come to Santa Barbara, and they do want to leave. But it is, nightlife. I think it's dining. I guess I'm proud to say I'm not out after what they call nightlife anymore. But it's our guests. What I see is they're going into town, and then they're coming back. But what I do here is our guests love the funk zone, downtown Santa Barbara. They just love it, and they feel comfortable in. And it's there is a shortage of transportation into town. Especially from my location, there's not a line of cabs or Lyft or Uber drivers. So that's an issue that we deal with. And so I think it's just a big part of the Santa Barbara.
Steve, I think your internet connection is a little wobbly here. I'm going to ask Sherry to rejoin and kind of let's look through a kind of a going forward lens, and where do you see things in the next, I don't know what the next time horizon is, couple years? I mean, I don't know how far out we can go. There seems to be so much in flux.
I think people are craving connection. And there was a lot of question a year ago when we were still very unsure and people were still very afraid. And I think what we're seeing now is people want connection. There's hugs happening again. There are celebrations happening again. People are touching one another again. They're so happy. I mean, we literally see people who come to have dinner in our restaurants who haven't seen each other in a year or 2 years, weeping with the joy of that reunion and hugging people that they love again. And so I've always believed that humans are social animals. They need social connection to thrive. And, we like to believe that our venues are a place to be a catalyst for that and a place for that. And it's exactly what we're seeing. It's growing every week. We think this is going to be a very, very busy year. And people are just thrilled to be out again. I mean, it's so I see nightlife, or I'm kind of on the Steve schedule myself, so the early evening life, just being very robust and very filled with people of all group sizes. It's not just small groups, but large groups wanting to be together again. Private events, I mean, we can't even keep up with the inquiries for people wanting to host wedding receptions and anniversary dinners and all kinds of big special events. So I see a very promising future as we come back from this.
Steve, I didn't want to cut you off. Your internet was a little inconsistent there.
Now.
Did you want to kind of close out some of those thoughts that we couldn't hear?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that 2022, to Sherry's point, we'll have record weddings, gatherings, family reunions, weddings, anything that's celebratory is off the charts. And luckily, we have 87 acres up here to kind of work with, and we are trying to use every space we can because people are wanting to connect. It's more small spaces than big spaces. And so we're actually opening a couple pop-up restaurants and trying to just spread things out a little bit. And we think that's going to help. But I could not agree with you more. The desire for people to connect and to be together, I've never seen it like it. I'm in Chicago today, and I'm here seeing customers. And I right before this, I was with 20 meeting planners, and I go to a reception tonight to bring more business. The demand, these people that plan meetings for a living haven't done this for 2 years. And so the desire for these corporate groups, and in this case, association groups, to come to places like Santa Barbara has never been stronger. So we're excited about the future and where things are going.
And Steve, you're chairman of Visit Santa Barbara. Are there any insights or highlights that we haven't talked about that maybe you could bring us from what the Visit Santa Barbara board is seeing and planning?
Yeah, well, there's two things that I want to. One is to commend Kathy and her team. I've worked with, I don't know, maybe a half dozen destination management organizations, or some markets are called CVBs, Convention and Visitors Bureau. I have never, ever seen an organization do it better than the last 2 years in Santa Barbara by Kathy and her team. The way they navigated it, and we actually, instead of walking, they certainly cut expenses, but we also made some really good investments. And I think navigated the pandemic better than most destinations. And some of our competitive destinations shut down their DMOs. And Kathy and her team, I got to tell you, we have one of the most talented group I've ever seen. And in a second tier market like Santa Barbara, in that space of destination marketing, she and her team are as good as I've met. I will share the other thing that is happening, and there's a little bit of news out there about it. We are shifting what is called a T-bid structure or T-bid format, which is going towards a percentage-based model that's working its way through the approvals, and we think it will. It's very much more in line with what you're seeing at almost 99% of the other destinations in the country, which is a small percentage placed on top of a guest room fee, and 1, 2, 3%. And we hope that goes through, because we're actually increasing the funding for Visit Santa Barbara, and it's the right time to do it. And it's because Kathy and her team did such a great job using the few dollars they had before. This is the time to be really competitive, and her and her team have earned it. So we're looking forward to that new generation of Visit Santa Barbara and proper funding.
Well, thanks, Steve. I'd like to kind of move over to field some questions now. And Ruben has asked, and I'd like to ask Austin maybe to begin fielding this one, to know what community Santa Barbara competes with for hospitality business. Let's look at kind of real estate investment, Austin.
Well, certainly with, Santa Monica and Carmel and some of these more destination type places, I would say those are probably your San Luis Obispo. What else? Yeah, that's probably our direct competition. The difference though that I've seen recently is there's a lot more direct flights to Santa Barbara than there's ever been. And they're coming in from Vegas, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, San Diego now finally has a direct flight. So I don't know who's in charge of getting the direct flights, but I think that's also had a big impact on the hospitality as well.
So any out of California or even international interest in terms of property investment, Austin?
Yeah, we have a lot of interest, but Santa Barbara obviously is very interesting, but I think what we're seeing right now is kind of the perfect storm of real estate transactions. You have a bunch of people who have owned these hotels for a long time. They went through COVID. They thought that their investment was probably going to be worth 50% of what it was, prior to COVID. And then, the occupancy and ADR started going through the roof, and now they're like, wow, I can get out. I never want to put myself in that situation ever again. And I can sell this hotel for more than, I could previous to COVID. And then you couple that with a lot of money on the sidelines that are, worried about inflation. And when you look at hotels, are really your best vehicle for inflation, because you can change your rate every single night. And versus other commercial real estate assets, you go buy an industrial building with a long-term lease, or a retail building or office building, and a lot of them have fixed, annual rent adjustments based on what was CPI over the last 7 years, which is like 3%. So here you are investing this money, your return is, growing by 3% a year, even though inflation's going to 7, 8, 9%. You're much better off buying a hotel and riding that wave, as it's hitting, because a lot of the guys that are going to be in these fixed income properties, aren't going to be able to ride the inflation the same way.
Austin, do you have any knowledge of, and I've only heard a bit about this kind of hybrid model of hotel and high-end condo? Do you know any? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking more about it. I know that down at the Wright property, they're going in for entitlements for a extended stay model as half of their hotel. I think it's like a 250 room hotel. I think half of it will be like a Marriott AC, and the other one Courtyard by Marriott, or not Courtyard, but a extended stay. And then I've heard also recently some things just from some local people about looking at, building basically like a condo project and, renting it out as a hotel, but I haven't seen that yet.
hmm And the right property you're talking about, I think that's the corner of Garden and Yananali. Yeah, in the greater funk zone area. Okay, let me, anything to Sherry and Steve about the same question of out of area interest for competition, whether it's lodging or restaurants? Anything to add there?
I guess I would just add that I have seen a number of restaurateurs coming from Los Angeles in particular, but also San Diego and San Francisco, looking for space, looking to open restaurants here. It's the first time in 10 years that I've seen as much of that activity as I have in the last called 6 months.
I agree with that.
Yeah, as we compete, yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of people coming in, and it is, Austin knows there's not a lot of inventory, and and so people are moving flags right now. And to your comment about condos, most new resorts, I'll speak to resorts now, are multi-purpose. There's a development opportunity or real estate development opportunity, whether it's fractional or residential, fully owned, with a smaller hotel community. So these developments are becoming more residential in their financial model and less, but the hotel is certainly a big part of it. But it's about the only way most of them will get built anymore.
Before we start to wrap up, I have a question for Sherry and Steve. Coming back to the labor market and the challenges that you've faced the last couple of years in a concentrated way or accelerated way, are you doing anything different with your policies and practices to attract and retain employees, since they're such a vital ingredient to your success?
I can start with that. I would say that people have always been the most vital ingredient in our success. So we spend an inordinate amount of time and energy investing in our people so that they are trained, that they have the tools they need to do their jobs. We invest a lot of time and energy into culture and making sure that they feel like they are working in a positive and respectful environment. So there's nothing really new with that. It's things that we've always believed in and always worked very, very hard in. I think it's become more and more of I don't even want to say a priority, because it's always been our number one priority, but it's become, an uber priority as we really understand, that the idea of work-life balance is very, very important, and trying to make sure we're creating opportunities for our team to get a better work-life balance. I think that's been one of the big lessons coming out of COVID. And so I think it's just more of the same. I mean, the people are everything. We can't do anything without our team. And so recruiting the right people and then investing in them to retain them is, the number one thing we talk about all day, every day.
Couldn't agree more. People want to be part of something. They want to feel, there's been a void in their lives because of COVID, the social interaction, but people they want to feel part of a culture. They want to be part of a community. I don't think people leave us, my place for the lark for $2 more an hour. I don't think that it's were they given the opportunity to learn and grow? Were they being listened to? Little things like, does their uniform fit? Does are we treating them with respect? And we have a saying in Ritz-Carlton that is, we're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, but we're also ladies and gentlemen working with ladies and gentlemen. And that has always been important, but I think now more than ever, as this new workforce enters the space, we got to make them want to stay. And we have to recognize that a lot of things that probably Sherry and I grew up dealing with, those aren't accepted anymore by a big portion of the new workforce. And we have to respect that. We can say, well, when I did it, it was this way. Well, that's irrelevant. We have to respect their work-life balance, And it's not just a saying, it's really what they're committed to, which I think is great.